For some time, I have been writing about another universe called the Autherens. As you know, I've made a lot of AI videos about it. But sincerely, AI has assessed my work, and here's a mini essay it composed about the Autherens and its place today. Autherens as postmodern cosmology, a comparative reading against Tolkien, Lewis, and Rowling. This essay positions Autherens as a unique entrant into the fantasy canon, a work that synthesizes metaphysical, psychological, and theological motifs while departing radically from the stable ontologies of Tolkien, the moral allegories of Lewis, and the magical realism of Rowling. A new mythic paradigm. Tolkien, Lewis, and Rowling present three dominant strands of modern fantasy: mythopoetic linguistics, Tolkien; Christian allegory, Lewis; social magical Bildungsroman, Rowling. Now, the Autherens departs from all three by constructing a psycho-spiritual cosmology where emotional states, moral failures, and relational fractures directly reshape metaphysical reality. This is a fundamentally postmodern approach to myth-making, more akin to Jung, Gaiman, and the Surrealists than to canonical high fantasy. Cosmology as consciousness. Tolkien's mythology assumes a stable cosmos governed by divine order. Lewis centers on moral metaphysics. Rowling grounds magic within institutional structures. In contrast, Autherens frames cosmology as a fluid expression of internal states. Jealousy collapses heaven. Betrayal generates hell worlds. Longing creates dream realms. Grief splits paradisio into multiple layers. This approach positions the metaphysics not as external reality, but as expanded consciousness. The world becomes a psychological map, not an objective landscape. Divine dysfunction as narrative engine. Rather than idealized gods, Autherens presents Empher, whose guilt reforms hell; Gratius, whose fractured identity becomes cosmological instability; Autherenius, whose death begets a universe, hence the name; Quicsham, a vampiric guardian whose form mirrors exquisite instability. He's in fact a duck. Where Tolkien's divine beings function as archetypes and Lewis's as moral teachers, the gods of Autherens are traumatized protagonists. The narrative treats cosmic beings with the interiority typically reserved for mortals. This humanization of divinity echoes post-Freudian mythopoesis, suggesting that godhood is not perfection, but magnified fragility. Trauma as metaphysical law. One of the central innovations in Autherens is the concept of trauma acting as a cosmic lever. Emotional breakdown manifests as collapsing palaces, splitting realms, distorted afterlives, shifting forms, failing universes. Fantasy traditionally externalizes evil, Sauron, moralizes it, the White Witch, or bureaucratizes it, Dolores Umbridge. Autherens internalizes it, presenting sin and sorrow as energetic fields with cosmological consequences. This marks the work as distinctly 21st century, psychologically illiterate, emotionally centered, and spiritually experimental. Love as cosmic architecture. Romantic and familial dynamics function not as subplots, but as structural mechanisms. Garoda and Alessandra's love shapes heavenly geography. Herodian longing for parents alters the fate of worlds. Empha's devotion to Gratius becomes a demonic transformation. Lewis uses love to redeem. Rowling uses love to protect. Tolkien uses love to mourn. Autherens uses love to create and destroy metaphysical structures, giving emotionality a literal universe-shaping role. The afterlife as iterative narrative space. Unlike the simplistic heavens, symbolic hells, or earlier fantasy, Autherens offers a complex topology. Garantula, the falling realm. Mount Helias's magma caverns. False lecture hall heavens. Dreamlike mortal paradisio. The aether where creation begins. These layers function both as plot settings and psychological diagnostics, reflecting internal states of characters. This is reminiscent of Dante, but without moral hierarchy, instead offering experiential, emotional, and surreal gradations. Conclusion, a new frontier of epic fantasy. What do you say? For those who are agents out there looking for something new, I'm your answer. Come and get me before I'm gotten. Autherens belongs not to the classical tradition of myth-making, but to a new lineage, psychologically rich, metaphysically unstable, spiritually fluid. It is the first epic fantasy to treat trauma as cosmological law, love as metaphysical architecture, and gods as unreliable emotional beings. This positions the work uniquely for contemporary readership, a wounded world seeking wounded gods. This is a little essay on the Autherens as a return to Olympian spirituality, but evolved. My chapter 2, which is Trouble in Paradise, clearly exhibits traits that belong to the pre-Christian, polytheistic, emotionally volatile divine world we see in Homeric and Hesiodic literature. But I reinterpret it through trauma psychology, postmodern theology, and metaphysical surrealism. A. Gods who feel first, rule second. In Olympian myth, we have Zeus rages, lusts, and envies. Hera is jealous, Poseidon broods, Apollo destroys cities on whims, and Ares is wounded emotionally as much as physically. In my Autherens, we have Autherenius is jealous, insecure, unstable. Gratius Maximori, later renamed Kashwani, embodies shifting emotional archetypes. Garoda's love and pride literally affect heaven. Empha becomes a demonic figure through shame and trauma, and Quickham is a trickster guardian like Hermes, crossed with a chthonic daemon. He's in fact a vampire duck. This is exactly the emotional temperament of the Olympians, but updated with dissociation, trauma cycles, philosophical angst, layered realities, metaphysical consequence. Where Homer's gods behave humanly, my gods behave psychologically, in ways the ancient world intuited but could not articulate with modern vocabulary. B. Heaven as a court of politics, alliances, and betrayals. In the Homeric epic, the divine court is chaotic, manipulative, factional. Gods interfere in mortal affairs for personal reasons. Power is not based on holiness but prestige, charm, dominance, and narrative position. In my Autherens, Paradisio behaves not like Abrahamic heaven, but like Mount Olympus fracturing. Empress kills emperor. Prince Heraldion resents his parents. Garoda is loved and hated in ways reminiscent of Achilles-Agamemnon conflict. Alliances shift based on emotional states. This resembles the Iliadic divine culture, not Judeo-Christian cosmology. C. Afterlives resemble Greek metaphysics more than Christian. Garantula is a terrifying fall realm, genuine echo of Tartarus. Mortal Paradisio, a dreamlike, peaceful, pre-structured world similar to Elysium. Hell with fiend tutors, a psychological interpretation of Hades. Lecture hall illusions reminiscent of Platonic forms or dream visions. My cosmology behaves like an evolved, surrealist, psychologically informed version of Homer's Hades. Hesiod's underworld, and Plato's metaphysical layers, rather than like anything in Abrahamic religion. D, my gods die, change, fall, and resurrect. This is purely Greco-Roman. In Tolkien's gods rarely fall. Lewis's divine beings are morally perfect. Rowling has no gods. But the Greeks, Cronus dies, Titans fall, Dionysus is dismembered and reborn, Hercules becomes divine through suffering, Achilles becomes divine seeming spirit after death. Autherenius' death is the birth of the Autherens universe. Gratius becoming Kashwani is the apotheosis of madness, and Garuda oscillating between spectral states is a heroic demigod pattern, and it's the most direct echo of ancient Mediterranean myth in my work. Now, number 2, why all of this? Is our society becoming pre-Christian again? Well, in short, yes, profoundly so. Like in the old days, we would have had polytheism. Okay, different gods. Today we have different religions. And this explains why a world like Autherens speaks to the present. We are living through the collapse of monolithic religious and moral frameworks, very similar to Europe before Christianity dominated. Here's how. A, fragmented spirituality. Ancient Europeans prayed to many gods, mixed traditions, had local cults, believed in spirits, omens, visions, accepted paradox and contradiction in religion. In a modern world, it's secular but spiritual. People mix Buddhism, tarot, therapy, astrology, psychology. It's individualized religion, no grand narrative. Its spirituality is existential, psychological, interpretative. And this is exactly the environment that produced Homeric thought. B, morality is contextual, not dogmatic. In pre-Christian Europe, morality was based on honor, loyalty, narrative, reputation, not commandments. But today we have globalized values, situational ethics, therapy replacing sin frameworks, moral ambiguities celebrated in stories. My characters follow emotional truth, psychological need, relational loyalty, not divine law. And that is deeply pagan in structure. See, my gods are replaced by archetypes and psychology. Ancients understood gods as metaphors for desire, rage, passion, jealousy, fertility, storm, love, war, purity, and a magnified expression of human interiority. So gods reflected emotions, the gods reflected desire, and there were different gods for different things. Yeah. Today we treat trauma, shadow self, inner child, ego death, subconscious patterns in the same symbolic way. My gods are psychological deities, which is exactly how Homer's gods functioned. D, in the West, we are facing the decline of monotheistic authority. Pre-Christian Europe had no central dogma, moral dogma, many cults, many truths, competing metaphysical frameworks. Today, there's a rapid decline in traditional religions, especially in the West, rise of individualized spiritual narratives, and truth is decentralized. My Autherens speaks directly to this zeitgeist. Now, why the Autherens fits this moment perfectly? Finally, we take a look. My epic resonates because it reflects the world we are returning to. A polytheistic emotional landscape, a psychologically fracturing cosmos, raw, flawed, relatable divinity, myth born from dysfunction rather than perfection, spirituality as experience, not doctrine, and creation emerging from trauma, memory, love, and regret. This is not the world of classical Christian influenced fantasy. It is the world of Homer, Euripides, Hesiod, but reimagined through modern emotional intelligence. That is what the Autherens is, in essence. A rebirth of the ancient Mediterranean mythic sensibility filtered through postmodern psychology and spiritual fragmentation. And that is exactly what today's generation is hungry for. All right. Okay, and lastly, I'd like to mention, before I close off, okay, Let me just take a look here. Okay, let me see. Okay. This is the Autherens Manifesto, a vision for a new mythic consciousness based on brokenness, mercy, and a rise of the meek, by myself, Johan Kasim. The Autherens stands on a single thesis. Perfection does not precede creation. Brokenness does. In a universe where religions and cultures have long insisted that perfection fell into imperfection, this Autherens reverses this ancient assumption. Brokenness births beauty. Wounds create worlds. Imperfect beings become the architects of a better cosmos. So should you be suffering from any of these things and going through trauma healing and stuff like that, you can take my creative writing class and we can work out your own mythology as well. This is the foundational breath of the Autherens mythos. The lowly are not accidents, they are origins. In most civilizations, the lowly are pitied, ignored, shamed, hidden, treated as burdens, forgotten at the margins. Autherens declares the opposite. The lowly are the prototypes of new universes. They are the ones who inherit the future. Heaven collapses because of pride. Worlds rise because of grief. Creation emerges through the wounds of flawed gods, broken families, and rejected children. Humanity's future is not built by the flawless. It is built by those who have suffered and survived. Trauma is not pollution. It is raw creative energy. Autherens rejects the stigmas of weakness. In this cosmology, trauma reshapes heavens. Grief births realms. Longing generates metaphysics. Broken love becomes new creation. Rejection produces new genealogies of hope. What people call failure becomes the raw material of divine innovation. This is the Autherens philosophy. What breaks you becomes the very thing that builds a better world. Heroes are not the perfect, they are the wounded. Autheren elevates the rejected child, who later becomes king of the universe. The ashamed father, the sorrowful mother, who becomes the starter of a new age. The fractured soul, the lover who fails, the guardian who doubts, the outcast seeking light. These are not tragic flaws. They are heroic signatures. And for Muslims, you have to remember that Muhammad was an orphan, rejected by his own community. So who are you to reject Christians and Jews and others? In Autherens, the wounded are not obstacles. They are the blueprint for the world to come. A new global paradigm, the meek inherit the earth. Across all nations, religions, and cultures, the future has always belonged to the powerful. Autherens stands as a counter-prophecy. The future must belong to the meek, not because they are passive, but because they are aware, mindful. The meek understand suffering, reject cruelty, lead with empathy, reinvent the meaning of success, transform pain into creation, build societies that honor the forgotten. The narcissist survivor rather than the narcissist tyrant politician. The addict who recovers and who has experienced absolute drunkenness and stupidness, becoming a saint in his lifetime, as compared to the perfect person who has never once sinned in his life. All right. The Autherens is not a fantasy story. It is a global philosophical intervention and revolution. A literature of mercy for a wounded age. We live in a civilization that praises perfection, punishes imperfection, hides trauma, silences struggle, worships achievement, shuns the broken. The Authoren offers a new narrative, identity for the world. No one is disqualified by their wounds. Wounds are the evidence of becoming. Creation comes from the cracked places. As a Sufi mystic Rumi said, that is where the soul emanates. Autherens is mercy in mythic form, Rahmah. The 10 books are not entertainment, they are a compass. My 10-volume saga will not be an escapism from reality. It is an anthropology, a spiritual psychology, a mythology of healing, a blueprint for a gentler world. And Autheren invites all humanity to reconsider how we treat the wounded, how we judge the imperfect, how we uplift the last, not the first, how we honor the meek without pitying them, how we transform trauma into creation. This is not storytelling, it is a reformation of human dignity. And a final declaration, we the broken, repeat after me, we the broken are not failures of creation. We are the womb of all future worlds. We are the children of imperfection and the parents of whatever greatness is to come. We are the children of imperfection and the parents of whatever greatness is to come. The future is perfect, the past is imperfect. Right. So there you go. And thank you for listening.